Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and we're here to ask for a second time with this particular game, is it worth it? Tonight we're going to be taking a second look at Gloom, a 2D roguelite by Hunchback Studio. The reason being, for those that haven't seen the previous videos, is that the written review I had posted on Steam elicited a response from the developers, which I promptly blew all out of proportion and proceeded to go very much on the offensive in a rant video that attacked the developers for even suggesting that a review be updated or changed. Thankfully, once again, a great many viewers were more than willing to call me out on my shit and forced me to step back and realize what it was that I was doing. Once I came to my senses, I promptly removed the video from public view and have uploaded an apology video in its place. And part of that apology is indeed this video, where I stated that I would take a second look at the game as the controls are now functioning. So let's re-review Gloom. Gloom is, as I said, a roguelite 2D fighting game that many have likened to being similar to Dark Souls. In this game, you of course play the Dreamer, a sword and gun wielding madman who looks like the Shadow Realm version of one of the Three Musketeers as he goes on a mad killing spree through what is referred to in the game description as the common dream. And I'm sorry, this dream is anything but common. With shadowy figures fighting for their very survival at every turn, you engage in a veritable ghostly bloodbath as you slaughter your way through the poor souls one or two at a time. Pausing to learn their patterns before chopping them into wispy little bits, you leave these strange apparitions just enough time to contemplate their own inevitable demise before slicing them down like they were poor defenseless Sith Lords and you the vengeful Obi-Wan Kenobi, until finally one of them puts your spree of terror at an end and they go back to what is left of their shattered lives. That is, until you load into a new game and start the madness all over again. This game is very big on the idea of permadeath. Once you die, you lose all progression and items within the game, making for a genuinely maddening experience that some people, not me, actually enjoy. The controls for the game, which were not functioning for me the first time I reviewed this title, worked quite well this time through, but I do have to take note that the responsiveness made the gameplay feel just a touch on the sluggish side. With a general slight lack of responsiveness, the game forces you to be extremely careful in your actions, as once you start them, you can't unstart them, meaning there is no action interrupt in this game, so be extremely careful to avoid button mashing. Also, the controls, while quite standard for this type of game, do not match with my personal playstyle, and I'm glad to see that since my initial review, the developers have added rebindable keys for both the keyboard and the controller. However, I do have to say that you will have a excruciatingly difficult time with the game with a keyboard and mouse, and I highly recommend you make use of a controller. And unfortunately for me, with games like this, when I'm faced with a controller and getting frustrated, button mashing becomes my default setting, and this game will actively set out to punish you for having that sort of reaction. It is very much a game of timing and keeping your head, which can feel quite rewarding as you finally best that boss that just finished mopping the floor with you 3 times in a row. Of course, that sense of accomplishment does get dimmed slightly as you realize you are now running on 10% health and oh, look, you die in the very next area after the boss fight. Well, best go back to the beginning and lose everything you had. And those power-ups you got within the game? Now, there is a Necronomicon, just so you're aware, for you to be able to look the items up that can be accessed from the pause menu, which this does make it a bit irrelevant and needless extra work to remind yourself what a particular item does. I'm curious, why not just show it once you know or have picked up the item already? It would make life a great deal easier. Of course, some would argue that the games like these are designed not to be easy, but for something that has little to nothing to do with the game's core mechanics, it feels like a bit of an oversight, nothing else. Now, the graphics are very much in an 8-bit pixel style, which I'm really not a fan of. Using black pixels to make up your creature and main hero only makes sense given the art pieces of the background and the sort of dream state that the developers were going for. I do feel a bit more could have been done with it, and I feel that without the game being 8-bit, it would have made the graphics actually more interesting to look at if they were sharper. However, the game is quite stable, and I detected no frame rate drops or glitches at all. It seemed to run perfectly fine with everything that I could throw at it, even different resolutions and everything of that nature. It just took it all in stride. Now, it's no secret, obviously, that I am not a fan of permadeath systems. With no meaningful gains or rewards to be able to carry through in subsequent playthroughs, I find myself just dismissing games of this type as I feel there are more rewarding methods of spending my time. That said, I do understand the draw and appeal that some gamers have for games of this type. And for those gamers, the challenge is in itself its own reward, in pushing through and making it just a bit further, being able to learn how to best an enemy more effectively, and making it through further with each subsequent run. And for those that like game systems like these, that can be an exceptionally rewarding experience. And for a fan of this type of genre, Gloom is certainly not a bad game. Actually, it's quite good at what it does. The permadeath mechanics and small randomizations of the levels give this game a huge amount of replayability, and you will be replaying it a lot as the game is difficult, but not enough to drive a person insane, merely enough to provide a genuine challenge for fans of the genre. So if you are a fan of the genre, then this game will be a good buy. However, with the slight sluggishness of the controls and the lack of meaningful progression, this game will be maddeningly frustrating for those that are not fans of the permadeath mechanics such as myself. But which are you? Pro-permadeath or anti-permadeath? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, please remember to like and share. If you're new to the channel, it would be a titanic help if you would remember to subscribe. We have a wonderful group of people here, and I would love to count you among their number. Links to everything else like Patreon, Twitter, and Facebook are in the description below. Please do make use of them if you want to stay up to date with everything else going on with my channel. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and thanks for watching.